Hello, everybody. My name is Margaret Ferris. I am the Executive Director here at the Professional Association of Resume Writers and Career Coaches. This is our Member for Member series. I'm very excited to introduce our hosts. Actually, everybody who will be involved in this particular meeting has a relationship with Park. Everybody works for us part-time. So if you can welcome Mark and Steph, who you probably all know, but also you'll get to meet super fantastic Sarah, who I met through my networking group here in St. Pete. And she has just brought great things to Park. So make sure I tell her I said great stuff about her too, well, as long as she's here. So
she is on her way. I realized I had to approve her to come into this room, so I just did that, and she'll be
honey.
here in a second.
All right, great. Enjoy, everybody. I think this is going to be a fascinating session, and I can't wait to listen in. So thanks, everybody. Have a lot of fun.
Thanks, Margaret. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie. I'm very, very excited about this. I've had folks look at my resumes before to give me feedback, but this is going to be a fun session because we worked with Sarah. Sarah, wave. She is our customer engagement manager. She is dealing with all things customer service with Park. And if it weren't for her, we'd still be drowning. So we thank you, Sarah, for everything that you do. But Sarah works for us part-time. And so Mark and I challenged each other to write a resume for Sarah, talking about this career transition. And then we want to see what you guys think. And then we'll get live feedback from Sarah. So I've not talked to Sarah since I delivered the resume. Mark, you've not talked to Sarah. So it's going to be great. So Sarah, if you don't mind, give us like a 3-minute spiel about your background so they can understand like what we're trying to do for you.
Yes. Hello. So my background is actually pretty varied. I have done personal training. I've done large conference and board meeting event management. I've done project management, and now I actually have a nonprofit for disaster preparedness and relief, and I'm doing advocacy work in the city, while also doing admin work. So it's all over the place. But when it comes down to it, a lot of my background, and one of the reasons why I went into project management and got certified in it, is because I saw a common thread. So I used to do social media consulting, and in that, it's kind of the same thing as project management, right? You are managing a project of creating a brand, creating a voice and a tone and a theme and everything like that, helping build out websites. I've done that as well. I've literally created and built websites, migrated websites. So I've just seen across the board, it's a lot of different types of project management. But with that, going into the advocacy work I'm doing and having it be a little bit more passion-based, and trying to look at work that would not only facilitate that, but also grow those skills, kind of realize that a lot of my resume doesn't really speak to it. It's just a lot of mishmash that I can see, but maybe someone else wouldn't be able to easily see. So yeah.
All right.
Very cool. I'm so excited. I'm so nervous.
I'm so nervous too. This will be fun. Okay, so I have mine up. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'd like you to go first.
You want me to go first? Okay, here it comes, guys.
Since you asked.
Okay. I'm gonna share it and then let it sit for a minute. Can everybody read it? Is it too?
Zoom in just a
No?
little bit.
Okay.
Just a question, are you showing my original? Because it's okay if you want to show my original, but with
I
how
should.
awful it was.
That's a great
Let's
idea.
do that at the end. We'll do that at the end.
All right.
That is a good idea. Okay, is that big enough? Do I need to go bigger?
That's good.
Positive? Karen's like, maybe. I can go bigger.
Go big or go home.
I'm gonna go big or go home. How's that? Okay, I got the kissy face, so I'm happy. All right, I'm gonna sit. Make sure you guys can read that.
All right. Very
Okay,
clean, good space.
No, you
right?
be quiet. You be quiet. I want everybody. I
I'm
know
loving
your
this.
feedback. I know exactly what you're gonna do. Okay, so this is how I do my jobs. scroll down a little bit more. And then this is what the second page looks like. We only have Karen and Marcy, and I know they're reading. I see smiles though, so I feel good. All right, I'm gonna go back to the top. All right, who wants to go? Well, Steve already raised his hand. So I'm gonna do this by hand raising so we don't talk over each other. But if you have comments, and I'd love to hear them because I'm gonna be taking notes, let us know. And then when I'm done, or we're done, I should say, then we'll have Sarah comment on this and then we'll share remarks. So Steve.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you for doing this. If we look at the blue, strategic, nonprofit, professional, I think the first two words are very important. First of all, strategic says you're doing planning. So that's project management, and that's executive, maybe management level. So that's a big word. And nonprofit, you're putting yourself as a nonprofit person there. You might want to change that if you're doing other, like 501c6 is nonprofit, but it's not charity. So I think the fact that you got strategic in there, it's not a weasel word like forward thinking or results oriented. I think the word strategic is always I'm upfront planning. So that's a good word to get in there. Now, driving mission impact through operational excellence, community engagement, and collaboration, I don't think that brands you uniquely in terms of, are you someone who does, are you more on the financial side? Are you more on the people side? Are you more on the IT side? That's anybody who submits a resume would say, I'm driving mission impact, right? And what does that mean through operational? So I would see if you could pull something out that says, how do you drive mission impact through operational excellence, et cetera. But starting out with strategic, nonprofit, professional, I mean, that's just a big bang right there. Unique selling differential. I thought that was very good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anybody else?
I'm shocked we don't have 30 hands up. This is a room full of resume
I
writers who are the
know.
most opinionated group of people I've ever met.
I want to hear opinions. You guys are loud.
I haven't figured out how to
Karen.
raise my hand in here. Okay.
Yes, raise your hand. Karen, raise it. Okay, so Karen and then Marcy.
Yeah, I think it does look very tailored. It's nice, clean, easy to read. So I love it for all of those aspects. And I think, you know, writing resumes, there's a little bit of a personal aspect because it's how do you love to present information and then how is it being received, right? And while I think the resumes are written for the people who are hiring, should certainly resonate with the people who are presenting the resume. And so I think that's a lot to consider. As far as critiquing goes, I think for me personally, when I write resumes, I want to look at using less bullet points. And I always share with my clients that you don't have to spill everything that you've done. Just give them a nice synopsis, like table topics of what you want to showcase first. And so I think my only thing that I would want to raise question is under each role do we need to have that many bullet points? It's not necessarily a bad thing, but are there other ways to kind of stage some of that information so that it's not bullet points? Like in some cases, depending on what this client wants to highlight, I might take the first, maybe first bullet point or two that are the most effective, most presentable, and just not make that a bullet point, and then kind of create supportive bullet points, as opposed to just having the role, the company, the timeline, and then bullet points. So that's maybe just a strategy I would take, but it does look great.
Thank you. Marcy and then Jamie and then Suzanne.
So there's a lot of things I like about this. There's so many things you did that I love and that I do. I love the areas of expertise. I had one question I have, I don't know if it's time to ask questions, but like the border around the whole resume. Why do you do that?
I just like the look of it. This is a template. I am not one to have many templates. I will say that that's probably one of my biggest weaknesses. I don't have a lot of designs. So to Karen's point, depending on the level, I will use this template, but then rearrange the information. So Sarah, I consider an individual contributor, even though she's a president of her nonprofit, she's still doing all the work. And I find with lower level professionals, bullets usually work better for them. So that was my strategy there. And then the layout, it's like, I just like blue and the border, and there was really, I don't have like a database reason for it, except that I like it.
I was just wondering, okay, and so then I actually really, I've done this a little bit, but I really like what you did, because hearing from her background's so varied, then that's always a challenge, right? It's easy to, okay, you're a level 1, you're a level 2, you're a level 3, but that's not her situation. So I really like what you did with the bullets and the bold sections. I'm working with someone, well, I just wrapped up, wanting to do something like that, because anyway, so that's really interesting. I kind of want to grab that. My concern about that is, so as Mark knows, I'm a recruiter by trade. And so to me, it's like, keywords, like, are we capturing everything that needs captured? Which I don't know, because I don't have a job description to compare it to. But I think that's really kind of neat. It's a little different. I like it. But then I did see one.
I did have a typo. I erased it so fast because I was hoping you guys didn't notice it. I had an extra word in there. I was like, oh shoot, delete.
So funny. So I was like, I swear it was just there, and now I don't see it. Good job. Good catch.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that happens. Okay, Jamie and then Suzanne.
I was also going to point out the typo, but in
You
addition to
guys.
that, I think these are really good kind of starting bullet point. I really like the second one we're mentioning, kind of expanding the grassroots volunteer network from individual efforts to a team of 3 to 5 active weekly participants, of like giving me a little bit of that scope and scale of the work. I think that's an area where other bullet points could add in additional details of like, how many post-hurricane recovery initiatives, like how many people did that impact? For the fundraising bits, how much money were you able to raise through that? So giving a better kind of sense of the scale of your work and how many people you helped through it.
No, and that's exactly right. Like we need metrics wherever we can. In this case, we didn't have it because it's so new.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Sarah was really interesting positioning her for the types of roles that she wants, because the experience is so recent that I struggle with looking at like, how can I make this look good without making it feel small time?
Right.
Because
Right.
the impact is there. She knows what she's doing, but some of, especially the more recent stuff that is the most related, it's difficult to position her in a way that like makes it seem like this isn't a brand new thing that just started, like, even though that's kind of what it is. So that was a really interesting challenge. But yeah, like, and this is one of those things too, where the interesting thing with what we've done is Sarah has seen both of these, but we haven't gone through the editing process with her. So like typically I'm going to be asking like a whole bunch of questions in editing to say like, can we pull out additional information here? So I actually, I'm going to make Sarah pick which one she likes better and then go through the editing
Oh
process with one of
no.
us.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see about that. And I also want to comment that I broke one CPRW rule for this resume as well. If you guys notice, I do use all bullets. I don't have a breakup of accomplishments and responsibilities, because I felt that there wasn't enough oomph behind some of these accomplishments because there were no metrics. So generally I would have like responsibilities here and accomplishments here with metrics and all of that. But being individual contributor, we just didn't have all those ideas. So I ignored that rule. Generally in a CPRW, we would see a differentiation there. Suzanne.
Well, you answered my question. I was actually going to ask why you didn't do the mini overview with the responsibilities. And then also I was going to ask why you didn't use past tense for the bullet points. Yeah.
So I didn't, because it was small time. Like these companies, I mean, they're small. So I didn't want her to look small, especially if she's trying to grow her nonprofit or establish her nonprofit in Florida. I also didn't use past tense in show up relief because she's currently doing it. So yeah, she handled two hurricanes last year. But I didn't want to say, you know, only handled 2 hurricanes, because in her story, she literally was out there like texting people, and people were like, oh, I have garbage bags and I have gloves. Like it wasn't coordinated like you would think from an organization. So I kept it all present tense because she's currently doing all of these things. And I didn't have accomplishments for the past tense that just weren't umphy enough.
Yeah,
Like they just didn't have as much.
Yeah, that makes sense. And honestly, I found some of my clients really prefer the present tense, even if you explain it to them.
They get confused.
They get confused, and so I'll deliver it, you know, as we were taught, and then I aim to please. So I'm like, if that's how you want it, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, so sometimes what I'll do, like, let's just pretend, you know, she did have accomplishments. Sometimes what I'll do is have bullets like this, and I'll do something very simple just to say accomplishments, and then these two would be in past tense.
Right.
But that way I have that differentiation.
Sure.
But because she's an individual contributor, but I couldn't do it with this one.
Yeah. Well, good job. Thank y'all for doing this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Tina, and then back to Steve. And then we'll go to Sarah so we can get her opinion.
Okay, thanks. So my question is something that I struggle with when putting together resumes. Am I putting this together in terms of the look, and you have that nice border, and it looks like maybe you got some columns in there for areas of expertise. So do you try to make it look pleasing to the eye, but then how do you balance the whole ATS systems, tracking systems, right? So with those systems, right, don't they get hung up on borders and columns and things like that. So when you create it, I kind of struggle with, well, how is this going to be used? And you want it to look nice and have some shading and some borders and things like that, but doesn't that screw up the ATS systems?
So borders, I've not heard that before, because it's just these aren't lines or like graphics. It's very much a border, so it shouldn't affect ATS. If you have a line graphic, that could mess with ATS. This is actually a 1-row table, so I have 4 squares going across. The way I've known it is it'll read a 1-row table. It just won't read multiple row tables. And that's why I avoid columns, like the actual column format, because of the section breaks. Like I worry about those. So that's why I do a 1-row table in this section.
So the
Here's
1-row
a good-
table you have, sorry.
Should work.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
you're good.
And you have those are just lines that you place then in between?
Yes. Yeah. So I just have them spaced. So can you see the little, like it's just 4 lines and then they're just spaced.
Okay. And then those
One
vertical
other-
lines are just lines
Borders.
that you,
They're borders.
those are borders. Okay.
Yeah. So I go up here and I can play with the borders here.
Is that 4 columns though, then?
4 columns, 1 row. So 1 row, you can have as many columns as you want. It's just the 1 row.
Okay. I thought
That's what
any
I've been
column or
taught.
any table messed it up. Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know. Thank
The
you.
other thing that you can do too is if you're ever concerned about whether or not an ATS is going to read it, hit Control A, copy everything, paste it into a .txt file, just like like WordPad on your computer. If anything messes up, the ATS will have a harder time reading it. If it looks totally normal, you're probably fine. It's like the fastest, easiest way to know if your design element is going to work or not. So if you were to take this, and that's why like things like the border and the blue box and stuff like that, to me, don't matter when it comes to ATS concerns, because if you were to take, I've done this with Steph's templates before, because Steph and I have worked together for a long time on stuff like this. You can take this thing, if you put this into a .txt file, it will look perfect.
Can I throw out one other tip?
Yeah, of course.
So when I do resumes, at the final, I create a text version for them and I say, this is what you're going to use if you're going to copy and paste it into something.
There you go.
Oh,
like
that's genius. Yeah.
Smart.
All right,
So
Steve,
smart.
take us home.
Okay, Tina, to your question about ATS, we keep hearing about it screws up the ATS, it messes up the ATS. What does that mean? Well, if Stephanie had put areas of expertise into a table, what's going to happen is the ATS is going to read Sarah Hips, it's going to go down to strategic nonprofit, strengthen, strategic planning, and then it's not going to go to the right. It's going to continue to go down to president, go all the way down the page. then it's going to come back up to volunteer coordinator. And so that's what we mean by messes you up and puts it out of order and such. So that's why we don't want to use, as far as Stephanie's box around the entire thing, I don't think it'll do that. And I think I've actually heard borders don't do that. So that's when we talk about when you put in a graphic, when you put in multiple columns, what happens is it reads it down and then it comes back up and it doesn't put those things in order. Now, how does that mess up the results? I don't know, but that's what we're talking about. If you're using, say, pipes between all of your keywords, that's not going to mix it up. Stephanie, I have a question. Some people will just put email and the word email and a link to it. But then if someone wants to type out and send you an email, it makes it difficult, especially if they've got a printed resume. So typically, I think it's recommended that you spell out the email address, and that's why you don't have joyboy27, you have a professional email. You didn't
Yes,
you didn't
hyperlinks don't work.
hyperlink to hers, and you don't have LinkedIn. Did you not have her LinkedIn profile?
So I have been playing around with that. So hyperlinks generally don't work. I have had clients come back and tell me because I used to do LinkedIn and then hyperlink LinkedIn with the actual URL, and it would break all the time. So I gave it up. And so then I started doing this where I'd have like linkedin.com/ I think it's IN, and then it'd be Sarah Hips. I just thought that started looking crowded. So for the past few months, I've been toying with it and not including a URL, and I've had one person ask to actually put it in. I just don't think it's that necessary. I know it's not a popular opinion, but something to think about.
Yeah, you need to make sure when you link to an email address when you're in Word, you have to say email, not hyperlink, because you have a choice of putting in a URL or
Right.
an
It's just
email
complicated.
address. So just make sure that if you're going to do Sarah Hips at Gmail, you make sure it's an email, not a URL.
And then the last point I'll bring up is on page 2. It's another standard to have their name and email and contact information on the second page. And we do allow it in the header because we don't care that it's read by ATS. So I just put the email and the phone number. I don't do location or LinkedIn or anything like that, just to keep it clean.
I thought Park recommended, I know that on the submission for the CPRW, they want your cover letter and your header to be the same as your resume header for consistency. You don't want page 2 to be the same color, font, etc. And then
It
page
doesn't have
2.
to be.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be.
It's still consistent branding. It's just formatted differently for page 2.
All right, Sarah. So let's give ourselves 4 or 5 minutes. What were your thoughts when you received this?
I mean, it's exponentially better than mine. Eye-catching, it's cleaner. It looks just like so much more professional. So it was funny because I think Karen said that like you want it to work with the recruiter, but it's also nice if it can resonate with the presenter. And I actually really identify with that because I can't tell you how many times I've run my resume through like chat GPT because I'm like so worried about missing keywords and this and that and the third. And then I'm like, I have no clue what it's saying, but I think it's saying a lot of really professional keywords. So I guess that's fine. And then you like send it off and you're like, I hope it conveys anything that I was trying to say, right? Like so like I do think that this resonates more with me, like I feel like when I'm reading it, it actually I can understand what it's saying as opposed to, when they're like, oh, they hit KPIs with the CECs that also hit and you're like, I don't know, but it sounds good, right? I think like there are only two things that I was wondering about. So and you were explaining it with the maybe it doesn't have enough um because I know one thing I get caught up in is trying to convey my passion of something in the words, right? And so like what I had hoped to see in the volunteer development was like and it's true, like my efforts last year were quite literally throwing it out there, but then I think, oh, I have to say we had 35 volunteers in 55 homes in 7 days, like because people need to know I have that initiative, right? So I was hopeful to see those numbers, but I also don't know if that's my personal bias of if those numbers aren't there, then the recruiter won't know. And I also understand that that's the type of thing I would convey in person. So I think that there's like that element of I don't know something, and I think it sounds right when you would say, "Hey, as the professional, actually," right? And then the only other question I had was at the bottom, you had removed my like the certifications and everything like that. And so I was curious if there was a reason
A
for
reason.
removing, yeah.
The only one I remember is the fitness one, right?
So I have PMI, project management, and then I had behavioral change. But then I also, and this is the other thing that I don't know what I don't know. So like I had been playing around with putting the committees that I'm on. I also had like my like volleyball, right? Because everybody's always like, oh, people like people on teams or that used to play team, whatever. And so yeah, I just like didn't know if there's a reason for those not being added.
Yeah, I didn't realize you had a PMP. You have a PMP.
This CAPM.
Oh, you have the CAPM. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah.
CAMP. I'll get that in a minute. And then the committees, yeah, this would be a part of our revisions, right? Like, oh yeah, let's talk about it. We have the space, so yeah, I'd absolutely, especially because this one's about nonprofit advocacy, project management.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the space. We would totally go back and add the committees. And
Gotcha.
whatnot.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, yes, super professional, super clean, looks like I'm a grown up, and that's kind of nice. So yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, so this is good. Like we're not 100% perfect, right? Like you got to go back and add content, or you got to fix up some content. Like if you have numbers and we want to talk about them, this would be a part of the process. So thank you. All
Is it
right,
my turn?
it's your turn.
Okay. So I'm going to show a couple of things really quick because
Oh boy!
I think
Wait.
well, I think it'll be useful to see her original. And I also want to share just for funsies, the notes that I took because I think it's cool to see like the way that different people do intakes. Um, so let me pull, I'm just going to share the entire screen so you can see a couple things. Okay, so here's Sarah's original, just so we're all aware of what we had to start with.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot in here, even some stuff that I chose not to include as well. So you're seeing lots of different things. We're going back to 2011. So this is what we started with. I take a lot of notes. So I have some generalized notes at the beginning to just say, like, this is what she talked about. Then I already knew about her park stuff because I work with her every day, so I know what she did. So I didn't take notes there. But I basically, as I go through and ask people stuff, I confirm all the information I have is correct. And then I say, what does your day to day look like? What were things you were really proud of? And then I have other numbers where I go through and I ask, like, okay, you mentioned that you worked with a team. How many people were on that team? So I'm taking notes about all that stuff. So you see, I took a whole bunch of notes about all the sorts of stuff that she did. I also turn on the AI companion anytime that I do this too, so that I get additional notes from the AI companion with all the stuff. So now I have notes from different perspectives, like what I perceived, but then also what the AI picked up. So that's actually kind of really nice. Okay, so yes, somebody said obituary resume. I use that term all the time with clients when I talk about this kind of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to show you like high level what I did so that you can just see like the format that I used, and then I'll zoom in so you can kind of look at some of the content. So this is the style that I used. How's that for size?
I can read it.
All right, awesome. Perfect. I did things I feel like very differently than Steph, partially because
Mhm.
I know Stephanie's designs and I have very similar designs to her sometimes. So I actually intentionally went a different direction with it so that we wouldn't have the same exact thing.
Yeah, yeah. I love the color you picked. Oh, okay. So now I see the certifications. Yeah. So the CEAMP, I honestly missed that. The behavioral specialist, because it was tied with sports medicine, I didn't include it.
I struggled
So
with it, but then I had the room,
you had the
right?
room, so you could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anytime you're certified, it means you worked and you studied and you're probably licensed, etc. I'm a certified tennis professional. I'm a certified resume writer. I'm not doing those things. I used to be a lifeguard, had water safety instruction, took first aid, CPR. You know, you can put, you know, it all depends on where you are in your career, but uh, you know, even though it was sports medicine, it means she's a serious, educated person who's willing to sit down and work. So that goes back to should you include personal stuff and charity work, etc.
I am very serious. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, you are.
So I'm not going to
Okay.
mess with you.
Okay, I want some feedback too. Y'all gave Steph a lot of stuff.
If I can say something, this is Juliet. Talking about that sports medicine certification, I don't think that it's necessarily unrelated to what she's doing now. I often like to look when people have, because I have a very nonlinear career myself, and so I like to look at it from the perspective that some some of our nonlinear experiences give us a perspective that somebody in the same field that has a linear career, a different perspective to problem solving. And so when you're talking about behavioral change specialist, and in her role now, she's involved in community engagement, I do find that to be relevant. And that's something that potentially can be spoken to when preparing for an interview.
Yeah, this was an interesting case too because like you'll see I did things really differently than Steph too. The Kona stuff is volunteer if I'm not mistaken, right, Sarah? Yeah, but I put it under a totally different title. I feel like Sarah is in a unique situation where it's not that I wasn't concerned about ATS or anything like that, but I feel like Sarah's next role is going to come from the connections she's made in the community. And so I was less concerned with the traditional like professional experience and listing things. I very intentionally chose what to include, especially on page one, to make sure that it was that advocacy work because I want that passion to come through more than anything. Yeah, we've got the project management aspect, but it's all within these mission-driven organizations. Um, so trying to show the thread where it might be difficult if I go park, but then also show up Relief Alliance, but then also under volunteering, there's these other things. I wanted to pull, like, because for me, experience is experience. I don't care if Sarah was paid or not for Kona for this one, right? Because it's experience, and I want that to shine through that she's on the forefront of these mission driven organizations and that she's contributing to these different areas. There are some things in the chat, so I want to run through some of those really quick. Certification, if it's expired, if it's related, I don't mind including certifications that are expired. So that's totally fine with me. If she had stuff down here that was related but no longer current, I don't mind including it. I might throw expired in there. Um,
See, and I
dates
don't.
for
If they're
certifications,
expired, I don't include it. So that's
you don't include
interesting.
them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they're expired.
Different perspectives, right? Like if it's
Yeah.
related, I might include it. Like I have some who had like different FINRA things in financial stuff. If they had it in the past, I want people to know they have the knowledge of like, Series 66, but they don't use it right now. Like it's still important for somebody to know that they did have it. So I'll include stuff like that. I didn't include dates down here because you'll notice I only went back like what, 3 years of professional experience. I did an early career experience here with no dates. So if I start throwing dates down here, I feel like it'll start to raise the question of like, well, what have you been doing? Like, I didn't want to confuse the reader by focusing the reader on the dates. I wanted to focus the reader on her contributions in a specific space and not worry about the dates. So I don't follow the like, you need dates here every single time, no matter what. Like, to me, there's consistency in that there's dates up here, there's not dates down here. I'm okay with it. Um, da-da-da. Education and professional. Yeah, I think education and certification, education and professional development, whatever you want to call it. Again, I was less concerned about the ATS of it all. Like, to a person, as long as they know what they're getting in that section, that's what matters to me the most. But yeah, like Sarah, you talked about uh all the 20 years of certifications dating all the way back in the chat. And like, yeah, if they're relevant, I don't mind including a whole bunch of those. Okay, I think I got everything in the chat at least. Yeah, you could do education and certifications. That works too. Okay, Jamie, I know you have your hand up. I want to get to you.
Yes. I really like your bullet points. There's a lot of numbers. I also really like the summary underneath each job of like, overall, here's what I did, and then getting a little more specific. I think I'm curious about the structure of the organization, title, date, and kind of how you decide to set that up. So it feels a little bit hard, like things are not where I expect them to be. And so it's taking me a little bit longer to find what I'm wanting to find in terms of how long were you there? And also not including a month. I'm curious why just years on this one.
Yes. Okay, so I didn't do months because I wanted to minimize the impact of she hasn't been at these jobs for very long. So like some of these are literally like March, right? And I don't want it to seem like she's been doing things for 1 month. So if I'm excluding months, it's because I want to minimize that a little bit. Um, I so actually typically this is really interesting that you brought this up because I was thinking about this morning when I was looking back at this. A lot of times I will do this format if they have multiple jobs at the same organization, but in this case she didn't. I probably should have left aligned those and formatted a little bit differently, and that may be one of the things that I would do during the editing process. But this is for like I'll do this a lot where it's this and then you have this repeated underneath for like a second job where maybe she was promoted into something else. So it's kind of the rationale there. I've got Karen and then Steve.
Yeah, so I really like, and this is such an awesome exercise. Even for me, I'm like, this is amazing. Seeing two different approaches. Can you go back up to the top? So, okay. So it's funny because in comparing both of your resumes and even the previous original resume, I think about how do we take that information and interpret it accurately? How do we frame it so that it's reaching that target role? And so I think the questions I would ask are, again, client feedback is everything. Because if it doesn't land with her and she doesn't know how to talk about it, then it's not really going to work as effectively. I think that would be my next question is to get her feedback on this particular kind of resume, because this is a lot more quantifiable information. And so what kind of a job are we looking at getting? Because if it is project management, this is phenomenal. If it's something more just into, I guess like that advocating and community leader kind of focused project leader, this would work, but it depends on who the hiring manager, networker, like you said. But if she's using her connections, this is great. Yeah, there are.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah. The goal is to be like a project delivery type person, regardless of what that title is, project manager, we could say, in like a more mission-driven organization. Is that right? Okay.
What was it? Sorry. Like yes, yes and no, right? So like I sent a job listing to Steph that I was like, ooh, because it's community engagements in the mayor's office. So it would report directly to the community engagement director
Cool.
for the mayor's office. And I like actually like know the woman that the job would report to, and it's doing like kind of a lot of what I'm doing right now, which is like just going to as many committee meetings and meeting all the people and like how do we activate the residents and all that type of stuff, right? And so I like sent it to Steph and I was like, like, ooh. And she was like, oh, like, and so it's like, yes, again, and this is probably my thing, and it's probably why it's so amazing that Mark and Steph offer to do this. I see project management in like everything. So in my head, I'm like, yeah, that's like project management, like, yeah, like, and so having them drill me down is very helpful. So I don't really know if that answers, but like I was
That's good
really
to
like
know.
sparked when I saw that job posting. So I was like, oh, like, and so yeah, anyway.
Well, let me throw this out there and then we'll get to Steve's question. So very often, because Claire just said this in the chat, like once you customize it to each job, absolutely. The tough thing about Sarah, and honestly, like for my clients, we would have done a bunch of coaching beforehand to settle on what are some job descriptions. Sarah is a little bit like there are different avenues that we could take. So for Sarah, I might work with her on multiple versions of the resume with different types of iterations, or we would do in coaching, start to narrow the scope, not down to one single job, but to like, let's look at not targeting it toward one role, but tailoring it toward types of roles. And so we might do that together beforehand. So this is an exercise too in knowing like we need to know what our client's target is before we write. Because if I gave her this very project driven, still has that advocacy and the community stuff, but if I don't know what she wants, all this project stuff might be totally useless for her if that's not the direction she wants to go. So it's always good to keep that in mind. Steve, let's jump to your comment.
Doug, I have two. I've done a webinar for you guys on typography, and you always want to ask, why am I using boldface? Why am I using italics? Why am I using sans? Not just why not. So if you look at driving emergency preparedness, community engagement, and policy level change, you use sans serif, all caps, italics. And in typography, that's known as the trifecta of readability death. So I would play around a little bit with that and maybe get rid of the italics or the upper and lower case. And then if you scroll down a little bit, um, I noticed that you and Stephanie both have the name of the company. You then have the description of the job, and then you have the bullet points, which is what we all do, I think. If you have room, what I like to do is put a return after the description. So now it links and makes it obvious that that description is related to the company and all that. And I basically might want to put in for this $15 million manufacturing company or for this multinational personal products company, because people want to know, okay, you did this, but for what company if you can. But I would, if you have the
Context.
room, put a return after residence and then have the bullet points separate. And then when you go to council neighborhood, I put another return. And again, in the typography webinar I show you how you can even if the return is 12 point, you can get rid of that letting and get it down to 8 point or something like that. But just to make this page breathe a little bit better, I do a return. I don't return after the company name. I keep it like you have it, like
Right.
Stephanie had it.
Yeah.
Then I would do a return, and then I would do another return, and then I have to manually go down and do 8.8.8 on my return space if you have the
Well,
room. And if you don't have the room and you've got one line hanging over, you can also go 8 point or 6 point, whatever it is. So play with that.
this is fun and interesting and Stephanie, you saw her chuckle at you. It's really because she's making fun of me. So I am notorious for the spacing is always my biggest issue, right? So I never let it breathe enough. And that's what Stephanie always tells me about my writing is that there needs to be additional space between those bullet points to let it breathe. I kept getting this on the bottom of the page. I even hate that there's just one bullet point here. Like this spacing between page 1 and page 2 drives me insane, and I'm the one who did it, right? But like if I were to push down so that this started page 2, I felt like I was losing value here that I needed, and then I was pushing all this down. So like the spacing was such an issue with this one, and Sarah is right at that cusp of like she definitely can't be on a one pager. So the spacing, I'm glad that you brought that up because it's always something that I think about, and Steph makes fun of me for. So thank you for that.
And one more
Lynn,
thing,
what do you think? Oh
sorry,
yeah.
in terms of these things are going to get printed and it's going to be held in front of somebody, and especially if it's a committee. And I went recently and I sent some resumes into Office Depot, and I sent them in as PDF, and all of my gray shaded boxes printed as purple. And he said it was because I did a PDF instead of Microsoft Word. So you've got reverse type in purple boxes. Did you print this out to see? Because I also recently printed something out and it smudged. So I couldn't send it. I had to let it dry. So I would recommend to everybody, if you have, we all use standard templates. You might want to print out some of your standard templates as well, because while it looks perfectly sized on a computer screen, 12-point type looks like a children's coloring book when you print it out. So if you're ever using color, it's going to get printed out black and white because the HR director doesn't want to suck all their color toner out of their desktop printer. You might also want to try it on a copy machine at a Office Depot or something, because a copier works different than a printer. So this looks nice, and I would just be curious, how is it going to print out?
I like that. Thank you. All right. What else we got, Lynn?
So I missed the whole beginning because I was running my Recruiter on Call with Jobs monthly event on Clubhouse. But I can still put some 2 cents worth in here. I never ever use parentheses around an area code, because to me that is old school, and it is days of the rotary phone. So I always go 412 dash, etc. All right. Areas of expertise. Those check marks, I think, are going to be a problem in the applicant tracking system. I only use solid black bullet points on my resumes. And I put those, I don't know if they're in a table or not. Hopefully they're not. But if they're in columns, I put them in columns and I put them in alphabetical order, because the hiring manager is going to look at it and say, must-haves, nice-to-haves, oh, he, she also has. So I'm a former K-12 teacher and I like logic. So alphabetical is logical. Now, I don't understand why you have the job or the companies centered. I always left justify. So it's company, comma, city, comma, 2-character state, tab over. All my 6 or 6.5 tabs are where the dates start, so people can skim and scan down. It's just really nice looking formatting wise. And then underneath you have the job title. I wrote a chapter in a book in 2016 called Find Your Fit, A Practical Guide to Landing the Job You Love. The very famous Dick Bowles, who wrote What Color's Your Parachute, wrote the foreword in the book. So when I had done a lot of my research about the ATS, and I've done a lot of experimenting and whatnot since then, you have to think like a database. So it's, so I think you're missing the city, state, et cetera stuff in the database.
Yeah. And we did say too, I did this a little bit differently because Sarah is less likely to be applying to a company with an ATS. Her next opportunity is coming through people she knows. But I like that feedback. That's good to know. Okay, what else are you thinking?
I still
then we'll get to
read
Marcy and then back to Steve.
I still read left to right. So keep scrolling down. Keep going down. Down. Okay. So again, like early career stuff, I don't really do it like that, but left justified, just because we read left to right. Same thing with the education and certifications with an S. I make that a 1-line. So it's Bachelor of Science, Tourism, maybe ampersand events management, comma, George Mason University, comma, city, comma, state, tab over dates, so that each education or certification is 1 line. So there's my 2 cents worth.
I love it. Thank you for that. Okay, Marcy.
Hey, can you go back up to the top?
Absolutely.
Well, while you're doing that, one thing I really liked is the 1-inch margins. And as a recruiter, I can't stand smaller than 1-inch margins. I need a place to write. I need a place to take notes. So thank you. I love that. I feel like I'm really learning a lot, because I normally use 3 lines for the content in 2. So I feel like I'm challenged on that. I like that a lot. And I like your summary. It's succinct. It's a little shorter than I normally do, but I think it's covers a lot. I personally don't. I like to have a target title, so I probably would have stuck with either community focused project leader or advocate, because to me it's a little bit, it's a lot, because to me that's like, this is what I do,
Lengthy.
right? Like, yeah, yes, like this is the thing. And then I also do 3 across 3 down, so I probably would have tried to tighten up the areas of expertise a little more, because to me that's getting to be a lot of bullets to read. And both of you also use the color bar for your headings. I've not done that, so like I think I'm definitely getting some real value out of today's call.
It's interesting to see how different people do it. I feel like I always, and sometimes, and look, y'all might be looking at this being like, these are things I never want to do. And that's totally fine too, because there's a million ways we get to do this. Some, but I learn something from every single time that I see somebody else's resume. So it's always valuable, whether it's stuff I never want to do or stuff I definitely want to do or adopt into what I already do. It's always so fun to see other people's. Okay, I think we had Steve, and then Lynn will jump back to you.
Yes, can you scroll down a bit, Mark? I actually have a compliment Lynn, I agree with you regarding the parentheses. I agree with you going justified left. However, everyone's heard of the ladder study that found recruiters look at a resume for 7.2 seconds. That was the sexy part of that survey. But the important part is, what do they look for during that 7 seconds? The number one thing the recruiter said they look for is job titles. So by centering these, his job titles now are a little bit easier to find. What I typically do is I start with the job title in boldface. Then on the line below, I do the company name and I do it not boldface. So they're separate, and I do it italics. So by centering this, Mark has made the job title stand out, which makes this resume more scannable, which we need. If you wanted to go justified left, I would go job title. I usually go 11-point type, and then everything else is 10-point type under that. But that's one reason why he might have put this centered.
Well, and I do that a lot too, because actually the way you're describing it with job title and then company underneath is the way that I do it on most of my templates. This one's a little bit different, and I was trying to be different than Stephanie because I knew what she was using and I wanted to show a different style. But I will do that too, because a lot of times, and I'll have pushback every once in a while from a client. I go, what you did matters more than where you did it in most cases. Not always. There's never absolutes in what we do, but what you did matters more than where you did it. Same with the reason that I put education above institution is because what you got almost always matters more than where you got it, unless you went to like Harvard or Yale or something, right? Or unless you were working at Google or IBM or something, right? That's a lot of like the idea of where are we focusing the person's attention, which is why that idea of bolding the job title, not bolding the name of the company underneath it, focuses attention in the right place a lot of times. I think Lynn you had your hand raised before. But oh my gosh, okay, we have 4 minutes, so we have to get Sarah's opinion on this before we end at the top of the hour. So Sarah, what do you think?
So I really like it. I like the color. It like feels fun, you know what I mean? And it's funny because there are pieces from literally both of yours that I'm like, I wish I could like smash it together, you know? Because I feel like I like the header of steps, but I like the like I don't want to say like casual feel, but like the slightly less like, well, I'm very professional thing, you know, like, and I really do also like the fact that the feel of like everything that you wrote, like, I mean, this sounds maybe weird to say, but having like the nonprofit and then like the committees and everything like that, it feels like I'm like such a good person, you know, like all I do is just give to others, you know, like which is really nice, you know, but it also I think makes it probably really clear if someone's like, does she care about the community? It's like, well, clearly, yeah, I mean, like she clearly does, right? Which is true, you know, and so I really like that. I also had never ever considered or knew that you could just lump your early careers like that. Which I've struggled with in the past because in the past, with my experience being so varied, I've always felt like, well, I have to list, like definitely have to list when I was a senior manager of governance, right? Because like that's a senior position. But also it was like so long ago, and and then and the same thing with like the meeting planning, the project of meeting planning. It was like, it's for me, I think, well, it shows that I did large conferences. So if I'm trying to say I'm a project manager, I need something that speaks to I've done really big stuff. But again, it's so long ago that I'm like, well, wouldn't someone be like, honey, that was like, how old are you? I mean, like that was forever, like, and so I've always really, really struggled with that, finding that space. So the fact that you did that, I literally didn't know that was like allowed. So I really like it. Like, and I do think, yeah, I like the like having those numbers in there, because again, it's what I was saying with Steph's, like, how do I communicate my passion for something, or like the zeal that, like, if I it could be missed, because I tend to say, like, if you can get me in an interview, I tend to do well, because then you can hear my passion and like the fact that I'm in it to win it. But if you are just reading, you think, wow, like this person's so all over the place, right? Like, so I do like that. But I mean, I like do kind of wish I could, like, yeah, I like want to like literally put them together and like have them have a baby.
Work with you on that. We can totally do that
We'll
between the
do
two
that.
of us.
No, you may
I love it.
not.
Okay.
We need her to work at Park forever and ever, because she has upped our game considerably. So cut it out. Well,
Margaret,
so much
I hate
fun.
all of these.
right.
No, but thank
Once
you so
again,
much. This was really, really cool.
Oh, Sarah, you're the bomb for doing it. Mark and Steph are such they're so generous to like just put it all out there and show it side by side, because everybody's practice is different, everybody's skills are a little different. And so I think that's one of the very fun things about this series. Remember, if you are coming to Thrive, stop into our little meet and greet, and if you're coming to Thrive, you can see them live and in person. And this happens like everywhere at the conference. You'll see people pulling stuff. So anyway, if you're not coming to the conference, go ahead and make sure that you check into the video library to follow up on, especially if you haven't seen their business side by side, because they both are solo entrepreneurs. So they put both of their stuff side by side so that you can take a look at how they run their practice as well. So make sure, if you're not doing that, you should go ahead and check it out. And that'll be there even when we're not. Sarah will be here taking care of you while we're in Chicago. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This was a super fun call. Thanks, everybody, for leaning in and sharing comments and thoughts. Means the world.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.